Good morning and welcome into our program, the Graduate Warriors program for this week. We have Wileen Becker with us once again.
Good morning, Gary.
And the other co-host that we have ordinarily, of course, I can't see him right at the moment, but it's Charles Quinn in back of the
morning,
computer
Gary.
screen. And then we have another co-host for this week, someone who's been here before.
Yes,
Wileen.
retired Master Sergeant Lisa Kirk.
And
Good
her-
morning.
Good morning to you, and your book is out. I'm so excited about that. I leaped in there before you got to say hello.
Oh, yes, good morning.
So tell
Thank
us
you.
very briefly about the book. We talked about it the last time you were here a couple of weeks ago. And what's the name of it, and where is it available?
It's In and Out of Uniform, and it's available on Amazon. And it's just trials and tribulations, short stories of my life when I was in the military, and to inspire and motivate people to never give up and speak up.
Okay, all right. So, and also we have a special guest here this week.
Yes, we have Scott Lunn. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Gary, Wileen, Charles. I really appreciate this opportunity to go ahead and talk about the story that we're getting ready to tell.
All right, well, first of all, can you tell us a bit about yourself? You're active duty military right at the moment, right?
Yes, sir. So I've got 20 years in. I'm a SAR major currently, active duty. I'm an engineer. I know it's going to hurt some people's feelings in the room, but that's okay. I've been doing it. Retirement's kind of. I'm at the autumn of my career, if I would accurately describe my career so far. So.
But you must love it right now.
Absolutely. Best job in the world.
So when did you become interested in developing your podcast? I understand you have a podcast to help the transitioning veterans.
Yes, Gary. So the name of the podcast is Surviving as a Civilian. And the background to that was about 2 years ago, I wanted to create a podcast that talked about if somebody had problems with suicide or mental health or PTSD. And I wanted to get with people that were able to get through that and come out on the other side on top of it. My focus really wanted to be veteran stuff, but I figured to get that broad of an audience, I needed to open it up more. So what I tried doing was getting just anybody that had a story to tell. Unfortunately, I'm not a professional mental health worker or anything, so it was difficult to get an audience for that to be interviewed. First of all, to find people brave enough to talk about their personal story, and then second of all, just the being able to get them to open up on air to a total stranger. So randomly, one of the guys that used to be in my squad when I was in New York, stationed in New York, who had gotten out of the Army, went to college afterwards for marketing. So he and I started talking again, and I explained to him, this is what I want to do. 2 weeks later, he called me kind of late at night and said, hey, I think I figured it out. Let's do a veteran-focused one where we tell stories about people who did something traumatic while they were in country or out, and then got through it, and then are being successful right now. So that's what originally started this idea for the Surviving as a Civilian podcast, and that's where we're at now.
And the podcasts are continuing.
Yes. So we just finished up our first season, 6 episodes. We're all done with that. We're beginning to today will be our second season, starting with our first real interview of our guest, Chris Egan. So I'm very excited about that. We've gotten a lot of positive responses from it. I've actually gotten one of our models for the podcast is if you can if you need help, get help. If you can give help, give help. And one of the things I always say on the podcast, besides giving the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline phone numbers, I usually say, don't be afraid to answer that phone in the middle of the night if somebody calls looking for help, because you may be from somebody that you haven't heard from in a year or two that's been out. And just by picking up that phone at 2 o'clock in the morning from a random number that you haven't heard from, you might be helping somebody you don't even know. So everybody can help. We don't all have to be mental health professionals.
How important is it to transition from active duty service to the civilian world?
So
We might bring Lisa in on this to comment, but
So from the interviews I've been doing, since I haven't experienced it yet, I'm not out yet. Really, what I've learned from these people that I've interviewed is that it's important to have a good support group and then have goals, and those goals need to be clearly defined what you want to do. Because if you just get out and don't have any direction you want to go or anything like that, you kind of end up dealing with your own thoughts. Because one of the things that the military does kind of get wrong a little bit is we're all around each other when we do these deployments and stuff. We're all near each other. We're all close to each other. But then 90 days after we get back from that deployment, you go to your new duty station or you get out of the Army. And then sometimes what I've been noticing, that's when people start to decompress. when they're away from it. Now that support that they had, their brothers and sisters that they were deployed with, they don't have around them anymore, and they're kind of on their own. So having that family support or friend support system is crucial from what I've been hearing from some of these interviewees. And then, again, having a plan, a solid plan. And then don't be afraid to adjust the plan either. You know, if it's you want to go do something and you decide it's not for you, don't be afraid to realign your focus.
Well, the people that you've interviewed the first season of the podcast have been people you know pretty well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But you're going to branch out, reach out, and start interviewing some people that you don't know quite as well. So
Absolutely. So
how scary is that?
So I've gotten better at it. So just to reiterate, so the first season was all people that we knew. Me and my friend Andrew Collis that helps me out with this thing. Second season we had about 3 of them that we never knew before that kind of reached out to us through our Gmail account, and the other half we knew. Now it is scary because you don't know what you're going to get into. And the second part of it is like I said, I keep reiterating, I'm not a professional. I have to be careful when we select these people because I want to make sure whoever I'm talking to is in a good spot in their life to where I don't trigger them by asking them to tell stories, and you know it's a pretty casual podcast. It's just me, you know. I just ask them questions, let them tell their story, and let them talk. So whatever they're comfortable with, I let them get out. But you know, we've not had any issues with it so far. But season 3, though, the one that we're gonna start again, I would love to have people I've never met before. That would be phenomenal because that's when I feel when I don't know the story and I'm hearing it for the first time on the podcast. Those are some of my best recordings.
I'm bringing Lisa in on the conversation. How hard was it for you to, you know, tell your story? I know that you did a couple of weeks ago on the Graduate Warriors right here, and you had some startling things to tell us. How hard was it to you know, get out of the military, but also to you know, tell your story?
At first it was hard, Gary, but now that I was able to push out my book, I went through cognitive process thinking when I was in Minnesota at the VA, and I was able to get everything that I internalized out. And it was easy for me to put it down and write it down. And so it made it easy for me. That was my therapy. So that's how I was able to get things out and put it on paper.
What inspirational message of hope, Scott, would you give to veterans who have been diagnosed with PTSD? Have you run into individuals with PTSD? And I don't know if you interviewed anyone on, you know, your podcast or not.
So I believe I think almost everybody I talked to had some sort of version of PTSD. I think it's, as a human, it's impossible to go through some of that stuff without having it. Now, depending upon how you deal with it or how much you want to admit, that's the level. But I think really just knowing that there's a support system out there for veterans, not just veterans, anybody. There's a ton of resources out there if you have PTSD or you're having a problem with you know, the way you're thinking. And I think that's the biggest thing is knowing that there is help out there. Like, just call somebody if you have to. You can even text now. You text help to, I think, 741-741, and or home to 741-741, and somebody will text you back. I mean, it's there's plenty of support out there. Just, you know, sometimes you get kind of in a downward spiral and your thoughts, and I'm not a professional, again, I keep reiterating that, but it's easy to get in that mindset. The hard part is asking for help. But once you ask for help, there's a bunch of stuff out there that can get you where you need to be.
Charles, I can't see you, but I'm sure you've got some questions. You probably have a quizzical look on your face right now. And what would you want to add to our conversation this morning?
You know, I appreciate Sergeant Major for what he's doing, and also the Graduate Warriors, because, you know, he's interviewed a lot of people that have success stories, but we know that's not the norm. A lot of veterans are getting out, soldiers are getting out, and the sad commentary is some of them are not faring well out there. There are a high percentage of homeless veterans. There are a high percentage of veterans who get into the civilian sector and finding out that structure is not there they're used to, and they are definitely not faring well. So I appreciate what Sergeant Major is doing, because regardless of where you are in the chapter in your life, you can always bounce back by getting that proper help. So I'm glad he's doing what he's doing with his podcast. But also, I would also recommend that having that laundry list of local support organizations out there, because you may running into those who for the first time in their life they actually reached out and they actually talked about their story on Sergeant Major podcast. And for them to leave after they have de-armored themselves, they need to know where to go and to kind of re-armor yourself and prepare for life after you tell your story, because some of them have departmentalized those stories for so long, and when you begin to open that door, so many different feelings and emotions will definitely rise, and you will need to continue some type of psychoeducation to better prepare yourself for what's to come. So once again, I appreciate what you're doing, Sergeant Major, and kudos to you, and we're definitely here if you ever need us to lend a hand or to lend a word. But
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Congratulations for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
So how can a person get one of your podcasts? I'm not familiar with. I've heard podcasts, but I'm not sure I've ever watched a podcast. So where's the location to find your podcast?
So essentially, you can look it up if you just Googled Surviving as a Civilian. Sorry, I almost listed my other one. Googled Surviving as a Civilian, it will pop up, and we're on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, all those. So we are. All you have to do is just Google Surviving as a Civilian, and we're like the first 5 that pops up in Google. And we have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram that seems to be not working at this time. I don't know for what reason, but those are the ways that you can look at it. And then just to add, so I know we talked about my season 3 that I want to do and getting new people into the podcast. So if anybody has a story they want to tell, they can email us at survivingasacivilian, just as it written, .casting@gmail.com. And we looked at, and you don't have to be military. If you have a story you think that can help other people, we want to hear that story, and we will like to put you on. So,
from your experience so far, what would you think the main fear would be of someone in the military transitioning to the civilian life? Finding a job, would that be the big fear? Or
so it's from the people I've talked to, there's two different, I think. So the people that have spent a lot of time in the Army, I think one of the biggest fears for somebody who's spent over like 20 years or retired, as opposed to ETSing, is that they don't know where they're at in their life, because they got in at 17 or 18. Now they're 37 to 40, and now they don't know really, being away from the military, what it's like, because they've been told where to go, when to eat, what to wear, and it's not that they can't make decisions, but for 20 years they've been, and then a lot of them have been retired, Master Sergeants, E8s, things like that. So to get out in the civilian world, one of the biggest fears is like, are they going to be able to fit in? Not having people show respect just be based off of your rank, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And for the younger people, mostly it's the security. It's like, what are they going to do for a job? How is college going to look for them? Because a 4 to 6 year contract takes a kid out to about 26 years old, and to start college at 26, being in the military, having that different type of discipline to where, some of the fellow students may not have had that kind of discipline. It was a little bit difficult. I talked to one guy that if he didn't show up 5 minutes early to his class, he wouldn't go to the class. That's just, he said, because of the military trained me to be 10 minutes, 50 minutes early, and 5 minutes he was out. He would not even go into class. And kids would show up late all the time that didn't care. It was just the mindset he had of being in the military. So I think the adjustment thing for the younger people.
That's interesting. Let's go around the table, give everybody a final chance to speak. I'll give you, Wileen, the last chance to speak.
Okay.
So
yeah.
We'll start with Charles, and again, come around the table. Charles?
Once again, I definitely give kudos and congratulations for those who have that support system and those who have those goals. That's very necessary as you begin to plan out. For the leaders who are coming out, please start planning at least 5 years in advance. If you're planning on getting out, have those goals, have that mindset that you're going to begin to get out and you can go into a whole different sector. But for those I like to talk to who may have not fared, where you can have a plan sometime, Gary, and sometimes that whole plan can fall apart. And I've had that to happen to a lot of our friends, or a lot of people I've known. And when that plan fall apart, many of them do not have a secondary plan. But I say to you, you can get up, you can realign, you can adjust yourself, you can come out of whatever slum you may be in, and you can rise out of that state and still become that successful story. So congratulations and kudos to you, and know that there is help out there. There are those who have made that transition and have made it successfully, and there are some that may have failed, but they got back up again, and I think that's the important part. They got back up again, and their success story was not a one first time thing. It was the second or the third time thing that they did.
All right, Sergeant Major, you have any final thoughts here?
I just want to say thanks for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate that. To everybody in this room that helped put this together. I just want to say, like, you know, the stories that I tell, they're helpful to other people, but they've been just as much helpful to me too, because I'm in the autumn of my career. Like, I'm thinking about getting out, and it's also therapeutic for me to hear these people's stories and stuff too. So, like I said, if you have something you want to share with us, just look us up and hit us up, and I would love to share your story.
All right. What about you, Lisa?
Sergeant Major, I just want to commend you for everything that you're doing for the veterans, the soldiers. You're just remarkable. I mean, I really look up to you, and I'm looking forward to that podcast and looking forward to seeing what you have to offer. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And Wiley?
Yes, I think what you're doing, Sergeant Major, is phenomenal. You're the first person that I know of your rank to take the baton and say, "Hey, this is what needs to happen," and it's, you know, retraining that mindset, right? So, I always say, when your military career ends, it doesn't mean that your life ends, right? There's a next chapter, the next page, and if somebody stumbles and falls, remember your setback. I mean, your comeback is going to be greater than your setback. So I think what you're doing is incredible, and I'm so proud of you. And if there's anything that you need from us in any way, please let us know. Thank you.
Wileen, you've got some phone numbers for people who need help in mental health concerns.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Gary. There's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline phone number at 1-800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. There's a warm line in Jefferson City at 1-800-374-2138. There's the Homeless Veteran Hotline at 1-877-424-3838. There's a VA Columbia Behavioral Health Green Team at 573-814-6486, and Missouri Department of Mental Health at 573-751-4122. Fort Leonard Wood has an excellent mental health facility, and always contact your local mental health resources, Gary.
All right. Well, thank you all for having been here today, and that is our program, the Graduate Warriors program for this week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.